we don't retire from this business if you truly are passionate about it. And if you're passionate about it, you'll be successful in it.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're successful in it, it's very hard to remove yourself.
Your network is your net worth. Come listen to some of the most successful people I know share invaluable knowledge, stories, and advice in real estate, business, and beyond. This is Weiss Advice. Whether you want to take your business or personal life to the next level, look no further. Welcome back to another episode of Weiss Advice. I'm your host, as always, Yonah Weiss, and today we have another very special guest. We have Mr. Frank Sproviero, all the way from North Carolina. How you doing, sir?
Good. Thanks, Yonah. Good to see you.
Always a pleasure. It's been a while, but we're always good to keep in close contact with people like yourself, doing great things. I was actually in North Carolina earlier this year. I put on a little event over there. Missed you, but definitely coming back. It is a great place to be. Tell me, Frank, tell us a little bit for our listeners who may not be so familiar with you. Obviously, you're in the real estate world. That's how we know each other. But for our listeners who may not know, what's a little bit about your background and how you got to where you are right now?
It's a little bit of a long story. It starts from family business, and so I'm going to go way back. So just get comfortable. So my family, I am first generation born in this country. My parents and family were Italian immigrants that came to the United States, and they did various jobs back in the day. They settled in Brooklyn and construction, various jobs. And I don't know what sparked it, but the three brothers started investing in real estate. I don't believe, unfortunately, I don't have the opportunity anymore to ask my dad, and I can't recall if I had asked my dad, but how they got turned on to it. But they were resourceful people. They would purchase multi-tenant buildings. They would live on one of the floors, and they would rent out, whether it was stores downstairs or apartments above. And part of it was to make way for other family members to come to the country. I know my dad had hosted many family members over the years in New York, and same thing with my uncles as well, my uncles and aunts. And then, one thing led to another, and they started purchasing more properties, and they built up a portfolio of properties in Brooklyn. And I think it was probably around late 60s. I think the issues started to arise in Brooklyn where they didn't feel very comfortable anymore raising families. Families were growing, kids, nephews were being born. And so they decided to, I think, they thought about either going to Long Island or other places, but they eventually migrated into Connecticut and slowly sold off their assets in Brooklyn and started purchasing in Connecticut. And from there, they just started many years of investing, purchasing multi-tenant properties, operating it. And back then in the Italian culture, it was a family affair. We always had reliable, very close attorneys and accountants. But outside of that, my mother did the bookkeeping. My dad did all the facility stuff. My dad and my uncles did all the facility stuff, and they would help each other on their properties. If something needed to be renovated, they were out there. And I'm the last one in my generation. I'm the youngest, and made in Brooklyn, born in Connecticut. But I have, some of my cousins are 20 years older than I am. So they were involved much earlier than I was, obviously, in whatever needed to be done. If the carpets needed to be shampooed, if the apartment needed to be painted, lights needed to be changed, roof needed to be changed, that's what they did. Lawns needed to be cut. It was a family affair. So as a kid, we went through all that. Got brought into, and little over time, you learned how to collect the rents, pay the bills, refinance properties, go get a loan for a new property. My dad was the youngest in his family, and his English was pretty good, but we would always go as a family unit to the bank, when he was purchasing a new property, and he wanted to show us what the processes were. So in short, that's how I got, into the business. people ask me how long have you been in business, I said, since I was about 5,
Right.
you know.
Basically.
So after, I started a couple of companies and operated a couple of companies. And as I got older, during that time, I always assisted in my family business. So once I got to a certain point and I realized that at some point my dad's going to retire and he's going to age out of the day to day, somebody needed to take that over and bring it to another level. Now, that was many years ago. That was 30 years ago. And over time, as I got into the operating, his portfolio, I got into it a little bit deeper. By early 2000, I joined a company in Connecticut. I went to work for a company, and they primarily handled commercial real estate. My dad's properties were always like mixed use, either purely residential or mixed use. And when I joined that company in 2000 or 2001, they were purely commercial. They would handle commercial properties, office, retail. They had a portfolio of hotels that they managed. They were
Gotcha.
doing bookkeeping for various companies. So I really, during those years, I was with them for 16 years and worked my way up the ladder and just soaked up as much. I had a good foundation, but they taught me the true ways of commercial real estate, from A to Z. So I essentially learned, through family business, through mentorship. And then during my time with that company, I got my real estate license. I affiliated with the Institute of Real Estate Management, got my CPM, my certified property management designation through them. And it's just taken me to where I am now. In 2014, I relocated from Connecticut to North Carolina, Charlotte, North Carolina. Everything that I knew was in Connecticut. Family, friends, business associates. I did work all throughout Connecticut, Western Massachusetts, a little bit of Northern New Jersey. So my network was so vast. But my son was born in 2010, and it's tough to live in Connecticut just from the sake of climate and taxes, but then throwing commercial property management on top of it, it can weigh on you. I'm going to say being locked down for 4 months in the winter is not attractive, especially after being in North Carolina for 10 or so years.
Right.
So my wife and I made the hard decision to pick up, and it took probably about 3 years to transition. I wasn't going to just pick up and leave, but we transitioned, finally made the move in late 2014. And I continued to work for the company I was with for probably about a year or so, maybe a year and a half, and until that got a little cumbersome because I would travel up there once a month and stay a week. And when I'm away I'm a family man, so I like to be home. I love to spend time with my wife, my son. So being away for that week was painful, but I know it was, mandatory. And then over time, I started looking around here for work. And coming from Connecticut, transitioning to North Carolina, there's a lot of differences, mainly there's a difference in cost of living, obviously, but there's also a difference in compensation. So nothing I really saw was kind of floated my boat. I wanted something a little bit more.
In terms of compensation in the real estate world, I would imagine a lot of things translate to be pretty similar, in terms of property management or brokering, in terms of percentages and things like that, right? But the property values are much less.
I had interviewed with various companies for director of property management, regional management, and it was different. It was
Gotcha. From a corporate, I gotcha.
That I was used to, and it really just didn't attract me. So, and by then I had transitioned. I had gotten my North Carolina real estate license, South Carolina real estate license, and I was set up to do business in the region. So I decided to hang my shingle for property management. This was in 2015, mid 2015, with the thought of growing a business, a full service commercial real estate business over time. And I started it with the property management, which was my background. We started working with clients. And at that time, we had a lot of clients that lived outside of North Carolina, investing in North Carolina. So I had hired a person or two to assist me. I was also doing brokerage leasing for the properties I was handling. And most of, the people I was talking to, I essentially used a database and started cold calling property owners that own property in North Carolina, but were Washington, D.C., New Jersey, New York, Ohio, California, Texas, Florida. They own property in North Carolina, but they lived elsewhere. And I came up with our pitch and started promoting our services. And one thing led to another. I networked, I got involved with the Institute of Real Estate Management here and started putting my plan together and growing my management portfolio. And that's what I did. I was explaining to somebody property by property, quarter by quarter. Slowly that portfolio grows and it was good. I made some really good inroads. We've got some fantastic clients and it's been really good.
That's amazing. So long story, shorter than probably the Netflix version of it. But what I love about this story is, like you said, you started in the business literally when you were a little kid and being brought up through the industry, basically taking on every single aspect of the industry you can imagine, from brokering to property managing to owning everything. What I'm curious about is you've obviously transitioned, like you said, close to 10 years ago, starting your own company, building your own brand in terms of that. But also what fascinates me is kind of taking that lesson you learned as a kid from your parents and their family, the power of ownership, right? Because yes, you can be a broker, you can be involved in the industry, you can do that, but real wealth building comes from the ownership side of things, I would imagine. I mean, I don't know, you tell me without, you don't have to necessarily disclose exact amounts, but in terms of compensation or wealth building, is, the property management company, the brokerage side, or the ownership equity side of that? Like, you're doing all three. So which would you say is more lucrative?
Well, so for me, it's a little bit from each division. So over time, we started with the property management. Let's just use, you take on a 20-unit multi-tenant retail complex or office complex. All of a sudden, you have a contract to manage the property. And then all of a sudden, the client needs leasing services. Now you have to start leasing spaces, doing all marketing, the advertising, the showing, the leasing, all that process. And that originally I was doing all under the management company with the idea that I had certain metrics that once we got above a certain metric, I was going to start a full-fledged brokerage division and start interviewing, affiliating with brokers to act under one alliance companies offering brokerage services. So, and then little by little, that was one of the first steps that we did, is transition from just a management company offering brokerage services to management company and a full service brokerage firm offering sales, leasing, tenant rep, landlord rep, all the above. And then as part of the property management, I had a metric that once we got over 1 million square feet under management, I would start a building services division. And that's what we did. And that building services division, so I never wanted any of these additional divisions to rely solely on property management. So I formed them and set them up to hold themselves out to the public and also providing services for the management company. So the building services company, they hold themselves out to the public. We have a marketing and advertising coordinator. I mean, she's marketing and advertising for building services, brokerage, property management. We now have an insurance division. So those entities are freestanding, but they all are synergistic to each other because the brokerage division handles all the managed properties, all the leasing. When those clients want to purchase more property in the regions that we operate in, we are finding a broker under our umbrella to represent them to go out and search for certain properties that they're looking for. And that's active every day. I mean, we have probably 30, 40 clients, management clients, that are looking to grow in the Southeast, which we now, we are licensed in North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Tennessee, and Virginia. So that's the synergy. building services, when the property management or when the leasing specialists lease space for the property for clients of the property management division, tenants need upfit. If you do have a dentist office, if you have, you name it, any type of retailer, when they move in, they need a certain upfit. And our building services division, they bid that work just the same as other vendors do. And again, they're freestanding. They are bidding the work to win the work under their own fundamentals. So the synergy between them is just fantastic. Our goal in the future, or our goal from the beginning was to have full service, one-stop shop for commercial real estate, management, brokerage, building services, insurance, and in time, I'm not sure, we'll see, but a commercial lending arm that offers, that has inroads with a series of lenders, whether it be banks, credit unions, private equity groups, life insurance companies. That'll take some doing because that, just like anything else, you have to now start its own division and find the right people to make those inroads with all those funding entities.
For sure.
And then go out to your client base and start promoting.
Yeah, nonetheless, very impressive. That I think the main point that I'm gathering from this is that when you're building one company to a new company to really synergize with an existing company and then one building on the other, it's, a conglomerate that's really each one is feeding into the other. And that's, I think, the beauty of commercial real estate, that there are many moving parts. And we always say in commercial real estate, right, it's a team sport. You need a lot of people involved. So when you can provide from kind of one place many different team members to a client, you're really fulfilling a lot of needs all at once and taking care of really adding value every step along the way. And obviously, like you said, building out the lending side of things, that's something entirely different. But I'd say one of the biggest factors in terms of commercial real estate, right, is the financing. So for sure, that will be extremely beneficial if and when that comes about.
I didn't recreate the wheel. If you look at the big five, the publicly traded companies, CBRE, JLL, Cushman, they're all doing, CBRE has the appraisal division. I mean,
right.
it's then that's synergistic in their way. I mean, it wouldn't work for us because, we just don't have that type of deal volume, but for them, it actually works, really well. It works for their own properties and clients that they're working with, and they hold themselves out to the public, which is, it's essentially, it's what we're doing.
Amazing. I mean, do you see yourself ever, at that level? I know a lot of smaller brokerages and things like that, relatively speaking, are being bought out by some of these bigger, larger corporate and publicly traded companies. Is that like an exit strategy at some point, or is this, are you keeping it in the family?
Yonah, man, this is in my DNA. I always tell me, Spencer. Spencer's, he sits right next to me, and he's a little bit younger than me, but we've spent a lot of time together, and I think he gets it now. I think I must have told him 10 years ago when I first met him that we don't retire from this business if you truly are passionate about it. And if you're passionate about it, you'll be successful in it. And if you're successful in it, it's very hard to remove yourself. Okay. Right. I mean, I work a lot, am I going to keep the same hours for the rest? No. But as far as exit strategy, I'm not there yet, but I do see some of the larger firms. Obviously, we've seen some transactions occur over the years. Some of the larger firms buy out. And even a lot of these private equity companies contact us regularly for our building services division. They're hot on buying mechanical companies, plumbing, electrical. I mean, we have our own mechanical team, licensed technicians that are out there doing HVAC work for ourselves, for the management team. They have contracts all throughout. So, we are seeing that. No one's contacted us to date about, buying out, but man, it's just not even in my thoughts right now. Right. I'm happy to come to the office every day. I want people that are coming to my office every day to be happy that they're coming in. So many industries, friends that I talk to, neighbors, and it's just a grueling process to get up in the morning and go to work. And we don't want that. We've built a culture in our company where we've added certain events on a regular basis that, we get to look forward to. Yeah. It's just been good.
Okay. Well, I mean, listen, there's always a possibility down the road, but obviously what you're doing right now is more important than anything else, right? Enjoying everything, what you're doing, building that company, and continuously, I should say, buying properties and managing them, doing all the things that, you've really built your career up to do. Along the
Yeah.
way, obviously, as an entrepreneur, as someone who has built, several companies, what would you say are some of like the most important lessons that you've learned along the way about building them?
Obviously controlling risk.
Mm-hmm.
Just recently, with the interest rate hike 24 months ago, 24 months ago, or brokerage division, we monitor this. I still oversee the management team. We have a director of property management. I'm director of management services. I'm also the broker in charge for the brokerage division, but Spencer is the managing director. So, he's dealing with the brokers on a regular basis. Chris is our director of building services, and Casey heads up the insurance. But, like just for instance, managing risk, we saw that interest rate hike. And from the brokerage division, what comes down the pike right after that. I'm sure you felt it, because if transactions aren't occurring, you don't have the ability to be out there doing cross-segregation studies. So for us, I think that first month or two where interest rates started tweaking up, I think we probably lost about 10 contracts altogether. Just the numbers didn't work anymore. And we saw, as soon as the interest rate, that's just one of the metrics that we watch is interest rates. Obviously, wars don't help. We've got to keep consumer confidence up, or else transactions across the board are just going to slow down. So when that time happened, Spencer and I got together, reviewed brokerage, our pipeline, all the brokers' pipelines, budget, forecast, and we just tightened our belt a little bit on certain aspects. That's something. Controlling expenses is, that's number one to me. I grew up immigrant family. Things were tight in the beginning. You learn how to control expenses, and that's just the way it is. So that's something. Controlling risk is, and then when we look at, we look at investment properties for clients, which we are doing on a regular basis, is just really analyzing the metrics, getting boots on the ground, and, finding out facts about these assets in order to provide as much insight as possible to our clients on, how to proceed with these assets.
Makes sense. It makes sense, right? Controlling risk, figuring out how you can manage and all the outside factors that come at you, because they're nonstop, right? You're never going to, there's always going to be something outside factors that are affecting the growth of your business, the investors or what have you, because there's, just controlling that risk and mitigating that. That's the only thing you can really do. So appreciate that. Frank, what I'd love to do now is transition to what we like to call the final four. So these are 4 questions I like to ask all my guests. The first one for you is, what's the worst job you ever had?
Wow. Overall, I haven't had that many jobs. My dad has put me in some, probably as a teen in the family business, I think I probably have come across my share of orders in my life, and having to clean out apartments after somebody's been, either vacated or evicted or something like that. And we didn't get paid as family labor. So I'm not sure if it was a job, but it wasn't a paying job. So I would say trashing out former tenant spaces who were hoarders, and really bad.
Yeah, that's never fun. I hear that. We'll take that. Second question, what's a book you've read that's giving you a paradigm shift?
I haven't read. I read international news on a regular basis just to keep myself. It's just been something that I've done for many years. A book, I haven't read probably a really good, notable book in a while, but the one that always comes to my mind is, and it was a small book, a short book. It was The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy. And,
sure.
It's just, as such of a quick read, it was just really valuable. And it just reassured me that what we were doing, what I was doing in life, financially, business wise, correct. Just to keep on building on what I built yesterday
Mm-hmm.
and doing that same thing tomorrow and the next day and the next day was really powerful.
Yeah, Compound Effect, incredibly powerful book. I highly recommend that as well. If anyone wants to check that out, we'll put that in the show notes. Third question, what's a skill or talent that you would like to learn? And this could be anything.
This has been old. This has been many years, but I'm older now and I might be scared of heights. I'm not 100% sure, but I
Mm-hmm.
always wanted to learn how to fly a helicopter.
Oh, wow.
So I'm not sure. I'd have to really think about that right now. But that's something that's, it's just always been in the back of my mind. It was something that I was interested in many years ago, and I can see myself enjoying that.
Very cool. I think that's the first time we had a couple of people on the show mention they wanted to learn to fly a plane, which obviously is very similar. But helicopter, I think it's the first time anyone's ever mentioned specifically the idea to fly a helicopter. Well, good luck with that. It sounds exciting either way. Wish you the best of luck. And finally, what does success mean to you?
Yeah, for me personally, yeah, just being satisfied in doing what I'm doing every day, supporting my family, being able to be with my family, having everybody healthy, and again, going back to having our people happy in the office and
Right.
enjoy their work. That is what success is to me. It's very simple. I'm not sure if it would compute with some people because obviously, you've probably asked the question 1,000 times and gotten different answers.
A lot of
But
answers, sure.
yeah, being satisfied in doing what I'm doing. And, obviously in this day and age and in past, in the future, you're going to need to make money. So being successful, part of that is earning a reliable living to keep doing what I'm doing is my thought of success.
Amazing. Love it. And, it really does translate to kind of brings it all back to the very beginning of your story, which is that, cohesive family unit, which in a sense you're building as well, right? With your team members and with the people that you're affecting, your clients. It's really, it sounds like you're building this big family as well in many respects, getting people involved in that side of the business. So
I read a lot, LinkedIn, USA. I read various newspapers and various blogs and stuff like that. And can't remember why they say that, your coworkers are not your family, your employees are not your family. I understand all that. I'm not trying to adopt all my employees or anything like that, but I still care for them all and I want them to be happy. And I think that makes them more successful in their position and in life. I mean, what we do here, the people that work for One Alliance companies, we don't just limit our conversations and interactions about One Alliance companies. I mean, we talk about what's going on in their personal lives and we just have that type of network and that ability and that openness. And again, I don't know, however you want to look at it. They're not my family, but I think I treat them probably just as good, if not better than my family.
I hear that. Definitely. Well, it shows, it comes across, and I appreciate all that you provided and the amount of value you're adding to myself, to all of your clients and everyone involved in the business. Frank, before we go, I'd love for you to let our listeners know how they can find you or reach out to you if they want.
Well, I always, we use our website as a good like central place to get all the information, not, all the information, but there's quite a bit of information. So our website is onealliancecompanies.com, spelled out the word one, Alliance Companies with an IES at the end.com. All of our contacts are on there. Some company, some past, some information about our past, our beginnings, how we've gotten to where we are now, what we do, about our team. We've probably about, all in all with building services technicians, probably about 30 folks altogether. So you can learn a little bit about who's in the organization. I think from there, you can kind of link to all the social media platforms and just see what's going on. You can read news and transactions that we've done and properties that we've taken over. And
Sure. Okay. Well, we'll make sure to put all that in the show notes, and appreciate you once again for joining me on the show. I got a lot of value from this conversation, and I hope our listeners did as well. And until next time, remember, the best advice comes only when you ask. Real quick, I have one question for you. Did you like this episode? If you did, I want to ask you a huge favor. See, the biggest thing that helps this podcast grow and that will spread this message to the whole world is that if you leave a review, a rating, and subscribe to the podcast. What that does is it basically tells the platforms that this podcast is out on is that you like my stuff and I'm doing something right. So take a few seconds out of your day, hit that subscribe button, leave a rating or review. I would be extremely grateful. Also, I want to hear from you guys. So I want to hear some feedback. If you have any questions for future episodes, please find me on LinkedIn, send me a DM, a connection request, Yonah Weiss, and I'd love to hear from you.